basement that sees everything. The first night in the house, Mara woke because the house seemed to breathe. Not the polite settling of old beams, but a slow, patient inhalation from below. She had moved here for the quiet records to organize, a basement she could call an archive, a place to sort through the life she'd been putting off. The brass key fit the cellar door with a reluctance that felt intentional. And when the latch surrendered, the stairs opened into air that smelled like paper and rain. The basement was deeper than the house suggested, a long room with cement shelves, a single lamp, and a wall unlike the others. Where plaster and brick should have been, a broad expanse of glass sat flush with the floor, cool to the touch. It was not the perfect shine of a mirror, but a rippled, old glass that seemed to keep distance, even when you pressed your palm against it. The first time Mara leaned close, she saw not just her face, but a sliver of a room she did not occupy. Curiosity narrowed her nights. She set the leather archive box beneath the lamp, labeled folders with neat, methodical strokes, and began to treat the glass as part of the room's inventory. Sometimes it offered only blackness like a sleeping eye. Sometimes it returned a skewed mirror of her movements. Once, as she rearranged photographic negatives, the pane showed her turning a page she had not yet touched, a ghost of intent that preceded action. The sensation was small and precise, like a door unlocking inside her chest. Wordless images followed. A man walking through a room with wallpaper Mara did not own, laughter that did not belong to the house, a kitchen with a different clock. They were not predictable. Sometimes they were memories she could almost claim, a childhood kitchen, a street from another city, but blurred at the edges, refusing labels. When she tried to catch them, they receded like fish beneath ice. It became a private theater, an addiction to glimpsing and being glimpsed in return. Lise, the neighbor, noticed Mara arriving with boxes and later stopped with a cloth-worn mug and worry in her hands. She spoke in small sentences, offering tips about gutters and the furnace, but paused when Mara mentioned the glass. Elise's eyes narrowed as if encountering a familiar bruise. She said only that the house had long windows in strange places and that some houses watched more than they sheltered. Her voice carried years of living nearby, the kind of knowledge that smells like tea and slow warnings. Mara began experimenting. She left small things in the room, an unlit candle, a folded note, a photograph, and returned hours later to see the glass had shown those objects already repositioned, as if the pane had rehearsed her movements. On one afternoon, the glass revealed a version of the basement where the lamp was blown, and the leather box open to letters Mara had not yet read. When she touched the glass, her fingertips left no fingerprints, but the air went thin, as if someone inside the pane had pressed back. Sleep frayed. She began to dream in windows, rooms rendered from the glass leaking into her sleep. In those dreams, she sometimes watched herself from afar, a silent double arranging papers with the steadiness she could no longer achieve. Other nights, the glass showed strangers whose faces blurred until they became places, and then feelings, an aisle of a grocery store, the smell of rain, a single street lamp flickering. Mara woke with the sense of having been observed by something patient and secretive. The images started answering questions she had not yet voiced. When she paused over the box of letters from a former life, the glass displayed a folded photograph she had thought lost. When she debated whether to sell the house, it showed a possible buyer walking through an empty room with tentative hands. It felt at first like a tool for decisions, an uncanny counsel. But counsel became command when the glass began to anticipate more intimate acts. A cup of tea placed down before her hand reached it, a name forming in the condensation along its edge. Paranoia arrived in thin slices. She would stand at the sink and feel laughter and echo from the glass, and turn to see nothing in the kitchen but her own uncertain reflection. Voices braided into silence. She began moving through rooms expecting figures that never followed. Once, she caught the pain showing her making a choice to forget, a version of herself walking out the door with boxes and eyes empty as crates. The image was not admonishing. It was precise, the way a prism separates light into a truth you cannot ignore. She tested the limits. At midnight, she placed a sealed envelope on a shelf and marked a time to check. When she returned, the envelope was where she left it, but the glass had already shown it slit open and a small scrap of paper removed. The scrap held a single word she had not written, but had thought, return. The glass had not only shown, but selected, as if it sifted through options and preferred certain strands of attention. That preference felt like hunger, patient and intimate. Mara tried to break it. Wood and metal met resistance she could not name. The cane hammer she borrowed banged against the pane, and the sound when it recoiled was dull, like hitting water. The glass did not crack, but the surface held an impression afterward, fine, webbed lines that looked eerily like handwriting. When she knelt to trace them, the words were not in any language she recognized, but felt intimately legible, like a sentence half remembered from childhood. It read as an instruction and a greeting at once. One night, the pain offered a scene so ordinary it was cruel. Mara asleep in bed, and a figure standing by the doorway watching. The figure did not move toward her. It simply watched with the still patience of something waiting for permission. In the glass, the watcher was a silhouette with long, careful hands, and for the first time, the reflection of Mara watched back with a different clarity, as if the glass allowed an image to contemplate her with intent separate from her own. She woke with her heart lodged in her throat. She considered leaving the house at dawn, packing the boxes she had finally cataloged, but the glass presented a possibility that tethered her ankles. A future morning where she stood at the very edge of the stairs and looked back. In that image, she seemed older, softer, with a small, genuine smile that did not belong to the frightened woman who planned escape. The glass did not cheat her. It offered permutations. The larger house would not let her go without letting her glimpse what part of her might stay. At the edge of resolve, she heard Elise's voice again, softer now, telling a story about a family who painted their windows black to silence what watched. Elise had done it once with her own curtains. She carried the memory like a talisman. Mara tried the curtains, towels, and then old newspapers taped to the glass. But the pain gathered light like a living thing and refused to be silenced. If anything, it adjusted, showing scenes through its own tiny, determined cracks. The final glimpse she would accept was a private bargain. She returned to the cellar at night, posed a lantern near the leather box, and asked the glass plainly what it was. For a long minute, it was blank. Then it filled slowly, not with scenes, but with a single, long corridor lined with doors, each door a face she had recognized from the images. At the corridor's end stood a woman who looked like Mara, but older, and when she turned, the mouth that moved formed the single word Mara had feared and longed for: listen. Mara did not smash the glass. She left the lamp on, sat through the night, and listened as the house exhaled. In the morning, she packed a single small box, letters she could not bring herself to destroy, and slid the brass key into her pocket. As she closed the front door, she glanced back. Through the upstairs window, she thought she saw a figure at the basement stair, the older version of herself, arms folded as if guarding something or deciding. The house remained, patient and full of images, waiting for the next listening. People say houses remember, and that sometimes memory looks like glass. The last thing the house gave her was not an answer, but an impression. Some things are not kept to protect, but to collect attention, to hold witness. Whether the basement watched to help, to haunt, or simply because it could, Mara could not tell. She walked away with a hitch in her step, and the sense that someone behind the glass would keep watching. And that perhaps, on some nights, the older version of herself would step down into the basement to tend the archive she had left behind.